It's common to hear that the love of money is the root of all evil. And this quote comes from 1 Timothy chapter 6 verse 10, but the problem is we've misquoted this verse. And in fact, we often kind of change or leave out some of the words in the verse and change what it actually means and how it applies to our life. But I think this verse is still powerful and it has some very applicable warnings that we need to lean into and we need to see how they apply to our life. And that's what I want to do in this video. I want to take a look at 1 Timothy chapter 6 verse 10 and dive into what it actually says and what it means for us today. Let's start by looking at what this verse really says. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. And some people, eager for money, have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. That's what Paul says in 1 Timothy chapter 6, but it's important that we note what he didn't say. See, one of the common ways that we quote this verse is money is the root of evil, and we leave off the love of, but that's not what Paul said. And another way that this verse is commonly quoted is the love of money is the root of all evil. But again, that's not what Paul says. He's not saying that all evil flows through money. He's saying that money is a root of evil. See, this verse often gets misquoted, and so I want to go back through this verse section by section and break it down so that we can see the richness and the beauty of what this verse actually says and how it applies to our life. The first part of this verse says, for the love of money. And right off the bat, we should note that Paul isn't saying that money is bad. He's not saying that money is something that should be avoided. The reality is money is neutral. It's not good or bad. It becomes good or bad depending on how we use it or depending on how we view it. Paul isn't rebuking Christians for being rich. He's not saying Christians shouldn't have any money. Rather, he's warning us about the love or the desire for money. And he continues this by saying is a root of all kinds of evil. And it's important, again, to pay attention to the words that he's using. We tend to quote this verse as saying the love of money is the root of all evil. But Paul isn't saying that. He's saying the love of money is a root, or some translations, is a root of all kinds of evil. You see, we tend to demonize money when we misquote this verse. We view money as the problem. But remember, money is not the problem. It's the love of money that leads to evil. Money is a root to evil, but it's not the root to evil. You see, when our heart longs for money or anything apart from God, that is a root to evil. Paul continues this verse by saying, some people eager for money. Now, this verse was written 2,000 years ago, and this shows us that the desire, the longing for money is a timeless trap. It existed 2,000 years ago, and it will exist 2,000 years from now. And again, pay attention to the words that Paul is using here. He's saying some people eager for money, not those who have money, those who are eager for money. You see, a common trap that I see Christians fall into is they think because they don't have much money or they don't have any money that this verse doesn't apply to them, that they can't love money because they don't have money to love. But Paul here isn't talking about the zeros in your bank account. He's talking about the longing in your heart for more. You can have no money, but still long for and desire money. The point isn't the amount of money that you have, it's the longing in your heart for it. Paul is building his argument here, and he's about to show us what the result of all of this is. And he says, some people eager for money have what? They've wandered from their faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. Paul is saying that the love of money has led to two negative consequences. First, it's led people to wander from their faith. In other words, these people have replaced their love of God with their love or desire for money. They're no longer following or worshiping God. They're following and worshiping money. They're doing whatever it takes to get more money at the expense of leaving God. And the result of that is they've pierced themselves with many griefs. And the idea here is that it's self-inflicted. It's not some outside force that's piercing themselves with griefs. No, it's their desire for money. Their longing. They've gone off and done things that they never thought they would so that they can get more of what they desire. And the reality is, when we worship, when we follow something or someone other than God, it will only lead to death. You see, money is a harsh master. It'll make us do things that we never thought we would so that we can get more of it. And it will never deliver what it promised. And that's why when we get what we think we needed, we always need a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And it never satisfies. It never quenches our thirst. It leads us to death. It leads us away from the life that God has for us. And this is why the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil, because it leads us away from the one that actually does love us. It leads us away from the one who can actually provide for us what we are after, who can provide for us peace and joy and love and gentleness and kindness, these things that we want in our life. There's only one person who can provide that for us, and it's not money. It's not him, it's not her, it's God. And when we love money so much that it causes us to wander away from our faith, what happens is we pierce ourselves with these griefs, and we end up buying into the lies that these things, this money, this product will fulfill us, but it never will. You see, far too many Christians have bought into the lies that our Western consumeristic culture has sold us, that if we only had more, if we only had that, if we only had more zeros in our bank accounts, then we'd be happy, then we'd be satisfied. But this warning that Paul gives in 1 Timothy 6 is just as important for us today. That kind of life, that direction, that worship of the love of money will only lead to death. It will never provide for us what we hoped. Therefore, we should keep our eyes on God instead, because He's the one that can provide for us the life that we truly want. He's the one that can provide for us the water that will quench our thirst. The love of money will never lead to what we hoped it would. So therefore, we should watch our lives and make sure that we don't love money, we don't desire money, that we don't worship money. Instead, keep God in that place in our life. I want to end by looking at how Christians should view their money and view their wealth. And we're just going to briefly look at this, but if you want a little bit more in-depth look, there's some videos on my YouTube channel and also blog posts on my website where you can get a deeper look into what God says about our money and our wealth. Many people take 1 Timothy chapter 6 to say that we should just avoid wealth altogether. We should just avoid money. But the problem is that's not what the Bible teaches, and that's not even what Paul says. Just a few verses later, he commands rich Christians not to get rid of their money, but to not put their hope in their money. And really, this is the command for all followers of Jesus, is to not put your hope in money or anything else, but to put your hope in God. You see, we should avoid the extremes of our views on our wealth. See, most Christians fall into one of two camps. They either fall into the prosperity gospel, where they believe that if they're just faithful, God will bless them financially. He'll grow their wealth. And if their wealth isn't growing, then that means they haven't been faithful. But the problem is that's not what the Bible teaches. The Bible doesn't teach if you're faithful, your money will grow. And it doesn't teach if you lack faith, your money will decline. The Bible teaches the opposite of that. And the prosperity gospel is one that we should avoid. But the second gospel is also one that we should avoid, and that's the poverty gospel. And that says that we shouldn't have any money, that we should take all that we have and sell it and give it to the poor. And that is kind of a tricky one because it sounds righteous, but really it's often a false sense of piety. And we shouldn't do that unless God has specifically told or commanded us to do so. We shouldn't give to the point where we ourselves are placing ourselves in need. God hasn't commanded us or told each of us to give away all that we have. See, what we should do, what Christians should do, is they should find the middle ground. We should be thankful. We should be thankful for what God has given us, and what He has given us should cause us to worship Him and not the gifts. We should be thankful for how He's blessed us, and we should be generous with what He's given us. We shouldn't hoard it all to ourselves. We should practice generosity. And again, this doesn't mean that we should be so generous that it creates a need for ourselves, that we don't have food to put on our own table unless God's commanded us to do so. You see, we should be thankful for what He's given us, and we should be generous with those around us. That's how we should view the money in our life. and we should avoid the love of money because it will never give us what we hope it will. Thanks for watching this video. I hope that you learned something and that you were challenged and encouraged in your faith. If you were, would you leave a comment below? Let me know your thoughts. And then also, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel so you can stay up to date on future content that's coming out. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.